have a question.
What's up?
I have a little. Oh God damn it! Do not eat.
I went for the
Pine
quietest
nuts.
snack I could possibly find. It was olives, and that was the last one.
Sam.
Actually, I've been waiting around for
Okay, great.
10 minutes
Okay,
now.
I'll just. Oh, 10 minutes. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing I'm late, so you could finish your snacks. You have a tropical smoothie?
I do. It's my first time. I got the Green Island
Your
detox. First one ever.
time.
Yeah. I just
Wow.
went crazy this morning. It's like, try something new.
Tropical smoothie's great. It was our first back in the day, like 12 years ago when I ran a photography studio on the East Coast. It was our after shoot treat.
Nice.
Cause,
I went for the
teens
healthiest
love
one I could
smoothies.
find, but I'm still not convinced.
It's not, let's not pretend like tropical smoothie is for a health
Yeah.
time. It is for a delicious, natural sugar rush,
Yeah.
you know?
All right. Hit me with your premise.
Okay, so I have a question.
Okay.
Okay. It's not a premise.
Okay,
This
sorry,
is just
question.
a legitimate. This is just a little question. This isn't a whole episode. I'm not gonna like monopolize our brains or whatever. But I do have a question. Like every month or two, there's an image that goes around the internet where number one is like a perfectly shaded, perfectly known apple. And number 5
Oh, God.
is nothing.
Why is this happening? Aphantasia again is going crazy
okay.
viral again.
Okay,
This is so
okay.
weird to me.
Yeah, of course. Every time. It's fine. Where do you fall on the scale 1 to 5?
I picture the almost nearly invisible apple. Which one is
Nearly
that?
invisible apple.
is that
So
the-
you're like number.
Is that the
4. That's like a
I don't know
4.
which direction it goes. Probably 4. Even then, it's I don't picture things in my head very clearly at all, if at all. And when I do get kind of an image, it's like a brief flash. It's not like I can fixate on it. It's very, very
Okay.
abstract. How about you?
Okay.
God, but why?
I have,
why is this happening again? I don't understand.
Don't worry about it. I have hyperphantasia.
Wow.
The super duper one that like I can replay a memory like a movie.
Oh,
when I'm
wow.
watching it. Like
That's cool.
Minority Report with Tom Cruise, Steven Spielberg, 2003. It's got a lot to say. 2001,
Great movie.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
Great movie. Tom Cruise, he makes great movies. If only he wasn't an ass. Anyway, yeah, so like when they're watching the little memory clips or whatever in that movie, and he's like just watching his kid run and like getting sad. I can do that, but with the majority of my memories.
That's amazing.
It's also really fun for food, right? So like I can like remember like a salsa that I had like forever ago, and then I'm like, oh, I'm gonna remake that now.
I wonder if that's
Or-
part of what makes you such a good cook, because you can, you have such wonderful recall of an experience. Certainly, I would think being able to remember something visually would help you put together flavors. But
Yeah, there's also like I also have the memory of the flavor and then can combine that. There's like there's that scene in Ratatouille where he's
it
trying to
goes dark.
explain what
Yeah.
food. Yeah, and it goes dark and there's the little jazz and then he makes them eat the piece of cheese and then the strawberry and the cheese and strawberry together. That's like
that's wonderful.
that's my favorite little scene, and that's what I do when I'm cooking. I'm just like, ooh, okay, I know that's gonna do this, and then I do my little dance. Anyway, yeah, so I'm like a 1, far left to the 1. I just found out my best friend of like 12 years is a hard 5. Just can't see anything when he reads. All he reads are words.
So there's
like
another thing that typically goes around at the same time as aphantasia called subvocalization. I'd be surprised if we hadn't actually already talked about this in some way. But that tends to go along with reading. When you read, do you just absorb the words, or do you hear your own voice in your head reading out loud?
Reading out loud.
Yeah, me too. That's called subvocalization. Many people do not. They just can absorb the words.
Oh, hang on. I'm gonna text him right now.
Yeah. It's I swear to God, this is a weird internet phenomenon that these, especially the aphantasia thing, maybe it's because of that graphic that goes along and so clearly illustrates what it is. And it's a kind of a bizarre word as well, just to read and see. It's like, what is that trying to say? But it is like every year it goes viral again. The very first time I heard a wonderful, interesting discussion about it was on the podcast Hello Internet, which were two YouTubers. It's on hiatus.
God, I really thought you were going to say Daring Fireballs.
No.
John Gruber talk show.
Technically, yeah. His weirdly, John Gruber's podcast isn't called Daring Fireball. It's called The Talk Show. It's weird. Anyway, yeah, Hello Internet. It's a wonderful podcast. It's so weird to me that you brought this up because I was in a wedding photographer Facebook group this morning where somebody had a poll about aphantasia and where do you lie in the thing. And I added a third poll option, which was just Hello Internet, because that is where, to my knowledge, and I'm pretty, because I've edited at the time, like, how have I not heard about this? To my knowledge, Hello Internet brought sort of the idea of aphantasia to the mainstream before anyone else really on the internet. They were a huge, huge podcast. Anyway, yeah. Why did you decide to bring that up?
Oh, I was just curious. I just want to know. Because, like, it's a pretty key experience for me, both as just existing, but also, like, a pretty key part of my creative process of, like, thinking about how a light source is going to hit me, or how a piece of reflective glass is going to show my face, or, like, all of the things. I'm, like, visualizing it as I'm setting up for the thing, and I'm going forth with the intention. And so that's is this why you like Insight so much?
I wasn't going to bring up Insight, but it does help. No, what I was going to say, I was actually also reading random for like 10-year-old Reddit thread from somebody who came to one of my workshops that was reviewing my workshop. And it wasn't really a negative review, but it was almost like it was a bit critical in the negative flavoring of how they characterized how much I used live view. It was sort of like, oh, I'm surprised how much you use live view. And then it was sort of phrased, if you read the full context of the review, in a way that it was like a bad thing. But for me, Insight, yes, very, very helpful as a tool to visualize and get the idea, know exactly what direction to take something once I see it. But but live view was the very first thing for me, even though back in the DSLR days, nobody else was using live view because it was so slow. I would literally, my entire process was enable live view, kind of get the framing approximately what I wanted, zoom in, manual focus, zoom back out, get the shot. And so you couldn't autofocus in any way. Nikon was very good about at least showing you an accurate exposure reading and accurately showing you the depth of field without having to do anything tricky. It just worked. Canon was
very good weird. Is a little generous. Yeah. Comparatively, it was amazing, but like it was not good in 2010 or 11. Anyway.
Well, I think it would have been maybe 2014 when it was first at all usable. And the most awkward thing was that these cameras weren't designed to really use that much, and they didn't have flip out screens, right? It was just the screen on the back of the camera, and it was awkward to use that feature socially because people would observe me, the photographer, with a big camera holding it out in front of me like an iPad or something. And it took actually many months of using it before I was comfortable and confident enough to not care that like people were like, why aren't you taking a photo? Or why are you looking at the back of your screen the whole time? Because I remember a time when it was thought to be, a handicap or kind of cheating or just a sign of a unskilled photographer to even review the image, like hit play and like look at the image. Like there was a school of thought that when you were starting out, you should tape the back of your screen so that you don't see what you're doing, so that you learn how to read your exposure through the metering, and it becomes like an intuitive thing. And I actually can see a case for that, but also past a certain point, that's stupid. And I just chucked that out the window and dove into real-time feedback, which now everybody understands, and it's so obvious given the mirrorless cameras these days that, that's the way it should be. Why bother not having real-time review of exactly what you're doing? But it's just funny
The
that
corners of the internet that you find are amazing. Where the hell did you find someone, multiple someones being like, yeah, don't review your photos until
it was a school of
Right, like,
thought.
that
That wasn't actually on the internet. That was observed by me from people who were teaching their own like workshops and stuff. So it was probably somebody from an era of shooting, maybe even pre-digital. And a lot of people, I think, a lot of photographers, when they evolve and start to teach, they tend to be at a later point in their photography journey, if not completely phased out of actively working, or they've really, really settled on the equipment that they use because their process is just completely defined. And so, it wouldn't surprise me at all if a lot of people that shot film primarily and then maybe eventually transitioned to digital understand and appreciate a certain quality skill set that comes from shooting film, where you do have to know how to meter and the limits of the film and the ISO that you're using based on how much you can overexpose or underexpose. All that was very difficult to learn in the film era, but once you got it, you could appreciate and use that to your advantage to get a certain look, which is why people would under and overexpose certain kinds of film to get a certain look. That really translated into the digital world. And I think that just was something that also I think photographers like to make things appear harder than they are, just to reinforce their sort of this craftsmanship. No, I'm not saying photos can't be really difficult, but I do think certain things, it's like, it's hard. The triangle of exposure, aperture, ISO, and aperture is like kind of mind-bending for a lot of people if they've literally never taken a photo, but it's not that hard to understand if you just take a minute. Anyway, that's just one example. But I do think photographers try and make things a lot harder than, on a technical level, a lot harder than they need to be.
Well, it's because we need people to pay us a living wage.
I know, and that is totally valid. And because I think a lot of the true difficulty in photography is in the process and the mental way you operate, which is very hard to explain and very hard to monetize. You know it when you see it happening, or you know it when you get your photos back where that value is occurring. But it's really tough to explain in a on one web page when you're trying to sell your services to somebody versus, look at this really technically complex picture and look at all these stats that I can spit out that, I understand, but you probably don't. So, pay me.
As I shared in our secret episode last week, been doing a lot of research on
you scared
trends
me. I thought I didn't
post
it or something. I've been a little.
No, that was my brain's just tired, man. We had that New York City meetup this last weekend.
Yes, I
got a tattoo. My brain's fried. But as an annoying trend that I've noticed on Instagram specifically over the last couple of weeks that's been popping up is people making videos on, why does it cost so much to hire you? And then it is them listing off and showing their camera equipment with how much it costs.
Yeah.
And so it's like, here's my $50,000 kit that I got with my $5,000 camera and my $2,000 lens and my $3,000 lens and my $2,000 lights, and just goes all the way down. And it's like, that's why it costs so much. It's like, no, that's not why it costs so much.
It's so frustrating.
That's what your equipment costs.
As far as running a small business, I always like to point out, $50,000 for your camera equipment. That's like a cheap, crappy van for somebody who, does a trade job. Not a tradesmith. I don't even know what you call them anymore. A trade job. Yeah. So a handyman or woman. What's the handy person?
Handy person.
Just having that as a job, you're going to lay out $50,000 to have a van to store all your equipment, right? So, in reality, that's an extreme example, but I think hopefully it illustrates the point that a lot of jobs require way, way more capital to get going. And,
first of all, and then that's not, it's a start.
I know.
Right.
I know.
Oh, I hate it anyway.
I'm glad you. But I mean, it's not that that's not valid. It does take a lot to start, and I know a lot of people do get their start working for studios that will front the cost of a whole gear kit, and you kind of will, like indentured servitude style, earn it back as you work for them. But there's something to say for that. Like, it's really hard if you're literally starting from scratch or have a ton of debt. To lay out, enough to get started can be a real trick, but it's not. Once you get the wheels moving, it's not that it's a one-time fixed cost for as long as you need or want it to be, unless you break something, which is also a huge benefit. Now, you do have really recurring services and stuff, but it tickles me to death when people complain about Adobe's like $50 a month subscription model for Photoshop and Lightroom. I'm like, do you understand that this tool, $70, whatever, Lightroom literally enabled almost the entirety of what we now know and realize and appreciate as the like wedding photography business. It really was so much more difficult, and you would really need to almost like hire a dedicated person just to do your editing because of how difficult Bridge and Photoshop used to be. Anyway, it's hilarious to me that I mean, it makes sense if it's a hobby and that's all you do. $70 a month, that's a lot, but for professional, it's crazy. And then, a lot of these subscription services, we don't have to get into the whole model of subscription, but the ongoing benefit of getting upgrades and your software that you rely on to continue to work as new processors and computers are released year after year is like worth it. You're going to have to pay to upgrade at some point. You might as well just get it as on an ongoing basis. And I always think of it as my client.
$2,000.
Yeah, right.
Right? Like, you just pay $2,100 to buy Adobe Creative Suite.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You got like 3 patches, and it was never new features. It was just, hey, we realized people could steal all of your computer, so we fixed that hole. Sorry. And then that was it. That was all you got.
Yeah.
So like,
it made sense at a time where
came out one year.
Tech was evolving a lot slower on a version base, but now it's crazy. You have to basically have a subscription model to keep anything sustainable. But what I was going to say is, the expense. So a lot of people complain about the subscription-based model for AI image editing, and it is quite expensive if you do a high volume. It can add up, but I always think of it as like my clients are paying for this, not me. That $50 I'm sending Imagen to edit my wedding, like my client, that is built into my cost of business. If it's a problem, just charge a little bit more if you can. I mean, there's obviously a trade-off there. That's a mental game that I'm playing to justify it, but it's also pretty accurate. Like, I'm losing money that I could otherwise save if I used a cheaper piece of software, but it's also, I can just charge a little bit more. It's not that difficult to justify if the tool really works. I'm just using Imagen as one example, and Lightroom now.
Well,
man, he sent us down a path. Can I just say?
I apologize. I just want to talk about an Apple.
Speaking of which, I got my notification that my new iPhone is coming. Excited to see what the titanium is like. I was not on the. Did you ever do the whole like 5 a.m. wake up pre-order game, or did you ever do the like wait in line at the store game?
I have never waited in line.
Me either.
Yeah. I don't particularly enjoy queue. I'm not British.
Yeah.
So like, I don't love it. That's a British stereotype, right? Enjoying queuing.
Yeah, not one that I've observed either. I don't quite understand where that comes from, but
well, it's because they love to queue. It's just I don't know, man.
I see it just as often in the U.S. I have not observed that happening. I will say one thing that freaked me out. I was just walking in Heathrow, just arrived, and some musical thing came on over the loudspeakers, and everybody stopped in place in the entire airport.
Oh yeah, that's the minutes of remembrance.
Yes. And it freaked me out because I had no idea. It's not like they said what to do. And so everybody stopped, and then I kind of slowed down. I don't think I stopped, but I just kind of slowly
you thought
walked.
You were in like an M. Night Shyamalan movie,
like,
right?
Am I about to get pranked here? What is happening?
The entire country is pulling a joke on you.
Just me.
You are the main character of the UK that day.
It was
the day of remembrance.
But that was the only time I've observed something where I was like, why is everybody waiting around? but they were literally frozen in place. It was odd.
Yeah.
So anybody listening, if you, I don't even remember what day that would have been, maybe November. If you,
I mean, we might have to edit this part out. But it's they're remembering, it's Remembrance Poppy, I believe. World War I Remembrance Day.
yes, because they also wear like the little pins with the poppy
Yeah,
flowers.
they wear a poppy. Anyway,
All
war.
good.
It's bad.
Can I just say,
Let's not have more.
I'm
Yeah, you
very,
can.
I'm very fixated this morning on just how underrated tiny spoons are. I was getting my olives for my little snack before coming up here, and 3 times today I've thought about just how useful tiny spoons are and how underrated they are. They're just not an appreciated tool. I use them all the time. As somebody who's a connoisseur in the kitchen, would you agree with that? Do you have?
I don't know what to do with this information. Yeah, I love a tiny spoon. Sure. I am also a tiny spoon. I have been a tiny
Aw.
spoon. I use a tiny spoon. Pro spoon in this.
Okay, so now segueing this back to photography, you've just reminded
Okay,
me
hit
of
me.
something. Maybe this is hard to imagine in 2023, but back, what was it, 2012, 2013? It was when DC legalized gay marriage, and a lot of people literally moved or just like made a pilgrimage to DC to do that from all over the country, which is amazing. But I remember at one of the meetups, photographer was like, "Yeah, I'm doing a lot more, same-sex couples, but I'm really struggling with how to pose them." And I believe it was a gay person said, "Oh, you should just ask them, are they a big or a little spoon? And then you can kind of figure it out from there." And I was like, I guess. What do you think of that, Danny? I'm curious. I've never used that as a strategy. I just pose them like I do anyone else, but it's a really interesting way to approach.
As the resident queer person on the podcast, I have a lot of feelings about being asked if I'm the big spoon or little
Exactly.
spoon.
I would
for
think
posing.
so, right? Yeah.
I mean, that's fine. I
guess it depends on
it
your
more-
delivery. If you're really serious and awkward about it, that probably is going to make anyone kind of just be like, "Why are you asking me this?"
I mean, it would probably just make me realize I hired the wrong photographer,
Exactly.
right? Because
Yeah.
the way that I would be posed if I was dating a man or a non-binary person doesn't change if I'm dating a woman, right? Like what they're talking about is like, oh, I've got a bunch of very specific gendered expected poses that I run through, and I don't know what to do when the gays are here. And it's like, well, okay, as a resident gay, I can say we don't care. Use the same poses.
Exactly.
Right? Like, we're still in love. We still want to touch each other's faces and smooch, right? Like, that's it. That's all.
And a lot of
that's all you
posing
gotta
comes
do.
down to the height difference, if there is any, and how you can get people basically able to get close and cuddly without them having to stretch themselves into it. Right, that's where poses tend to break down for me. No matter who I'm photographing, if one person's really really tall and another is really short, or there's any type of weird differential in their body shapes, and one person has to like stick their neck out a little bit more awkwardly or wrap their hands around a little more stretched, that's when it starts to feel and look very forced. And you just want to do things either working with your environment, or I like to have like a taller person do the splits and photograph them from the waist up, so that lowers them relative to the person, shorter person. And
Oh, you
they
meant
can-
just having them put their legs out a little bit and
Yeah.
scooch down. I thought you meant the legitimate split.
It's like
I was
right on
like,
the
how
ground.
many-
Yeah, no. I do phrase it.
those
That
tendons.
is one of my. If I do have a list of go-to kind of jokey things that make people laugh, I do deliver it as if I want them to do the splits, only because it's like it confuses them exactly as you were and makes them chuckle once they realize what I mean. But that's a great way to let somebody kind of lower them a few inches, and as long as you're not doing a full body shot. Although I do take one and tell them I use that for blackmail later, just because it's a cheesy joke. There it is. See?
There it is.
it allows them to kind of cuddle up and get their faces physically close together without having to have an awkward hunch or like neck stretch or anything else. So anyway, that's the big thing. You're exactly right. A lot of people have this archetype, this pattern of how they pose people, and it is very, one person just looks very feminine and one person looks very masculine, and it's like that can work, but you really need to lean into the body types of people and then pay attention to their natural chemistry. It doesn't take more than 5 minutes to figure out like how people interact with one another, as long as you just start and don't make it awkward. But,
yeah, it's really easy to just not make it awkward. Pro tip for any of the people who are photographing us gays, just take our photo. That's it. That's my thing. I have considered one of the things that, we've talked about this a couple of times about how I've been like debating doing a little bit more freelancing and moonlighting. And I was like, what's the type of like descriptor that I could, like, should I do, I only shoot elopements, or I only shoot secular weddings, or I only shoot gay weddings. And I was like, maybe I should only shoot gay weddings. Maybe I should just become their premier queer photographer for queer photographers.
Yeah, that's a thing. I see it all the time. Although I say I see it. I see kind of the label in people's kind of bio, but I wonder if that's more of just trying to carve out or signal that, happy to do it, not necessarily this is what I specialize in.
This is all I do.
Yeah.
If you're having a traditional marriage in a church, I'm out. But if you're getting married at a park or a bar, sign me up.
I've done a lot of gay weddings in a traditional church, surprisingly. It's not uncommon.
Yeah, we're both less and more hated now than ever. It's super. It's super fun.
See, you were wondering where I was going with the whole spoon conversation, and
I love that.
Morphed into
one of the weirdest and most enjoyable parts of running the like hard parts of the community of glass is just randomly, like once a quarter probably, I have to kick off a transphobe or a homophobic person or someone who's saying something like really shitty, and like 3 times now in the last two plus years, because we're like 26 months or whatever in. Someone's been like, why do you even why do you care? I'm like, dude, I'm not straight. And like anytime I get to be like, no, I'm not straight, so haha. And it's like a nice little final card that I get to play when I'm being a little guy. It's super fun, you gotta enjoy the little things.
I like it. That's wonderful. I'm actually very impressed that it's only been 3 times. I've been dealing with how to operate and set insight results up for same-sex couples, because I photograph a lot of them, and what tends to happen is, having two men in the original source photo, it will drastically, if not put them in a dress, one of the person in the couple, because it's trying to like cram the result into what is probably most of the data set that the model is built on, same-sex bride and groom getting married. So it makes sense why it's happening, but to fight against it in terms of like setting up the code or the prompts that I'm using or whatever, it has been proven really quite difficult. I don't want somebody to get a result back and be like, oh, this makes me uncomfortable. And it's proving kind of difficult when it's any type of, or if somebody's not in a traditional wedding dress, actually, even just that confuses it sometimes. So it's a trick.
Well, AI is not very smart.
No.
Because it's not really AI. It's just a very complex
It's not very smart right now, but I'm excited to have it all built so that the day that it is like a super genius, general intelligence, when that comes upon us, I'm going to be first
in line.
We don't have to get down the AI route yet again, but I have found that an interesting issue to deal with, just in terms of yeah, trying to get something different, or just outside of like what is clearly most of these models' data set is tricky, tricky stuff.
Tricky stuff. Well,
So
it's
how'd the
only
meetup
because
go?
that data set doesn't like you. Oh my God, Meetup was pretty great. I'm pretty tired. I made some bad choices, and that was on me.
Oh.
My bad choice was to do literally anything before the meetup.
Oh.
So I like
Yeah,
I got a tattoo the day before, and that was a
that
little
is
oopsie.
exhausting. No, it's quite a large tattoo as well. How long did it take?
Just under 8 hours. So like just sitting around getting 8 hours on my collarbone, and then like slept in a shoebox, and then woke up and was like, okay, now let's all hang out. But other than that, other than my open wound that I gave myself before the meetup, it was great. There are a few places, Baltimore, New York, and Amsterdam, where we're going to be able to hold pretty regular meetups because of our, member size in those cities, but also because of our ease of use to get to them, right? Like it costs me $30 to get to New York if I plan. So we're gonna start having pretty regular meetups in New York, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, shockingly, I would say the typical round trip cost between Baltimore and New York for the Excella is close to like $400. The cheaper, slower train, which is about 40 minutes slower, I think. So it's
It
not
is.
that big of a difference. Is closer to maybe 250 round trip. But I got one at the daytime, during the daytime, like outside of rush hours. But I don't know why it was so cheap. I got a round trip, $100, $25
Yeah.
one way, and $75 another. I was very impressed, and hopefully that trend continues.
Yeah, so that's gonna be you and me riding to New York, doing a quick little meetup, and then riding back. I just complained about doing something beforehand, but like the idea of holding a meetup and then immediately getting on a train that takes 3 hours to get home and then get home is also a terrible idea that I'm gonna do at least 4 times before I learn my lesson and just book a single
Yep.
hotel
It's rough.
room. But I'm gonna do it, and I can't wait. Yeah, so we're gonna have another New York meetup in like I don't know, November probably.
Yeah, I've done
That sounds right.
train up, maybe leave at 2, get there, shoot an engagement session, train back. It's not too bad if you're on the Excella. It's literally right around 2 hours, 2 hours 10 minutes. So just enough time to kind of get some work done. But the big problem if you're going and shooting is being able to, like, I can't do that with a wedding because obviously because that would be wedding days are longer. But is the equipment. So if you do require, a backpack of stuff, I like to shoot very light. I hate having like even a backpack on my back while shooting a session would be insanely distracting and problematic for me and in a way that I would just be uncomfortable. I just want my sling bag
Slings
and my normal
only.
stuff. Yeah. And
Hell yeah.
the sling bag I use it's not on paper. It says it doesn't fit, but if you just squeeze it hard enough, will fit the 14-inch MacBook Pro. And it's just a light enough computer that I can shoot with that on, and it's not too uncomfortable. Yeah.
I did run into a bit of a problem while in New York shooting photos in New York. New York is not a manual focus town. It is.
Was this
your
if you went on a
photos-
photo walk with everyone?
Yeah, so we went on our photo walk, and it was great, and I had a great time. But like the Minicon itself moves a little slower, and the manual focus is a little slower, and like I missed so many photos, just
Yeah.
endless amounts of photos, both either missing them because like, oh, I'm just not going to take this, I missed focus and now it's gone because the person walked past the frame or they walked past the little moment, whatever. And so it's like that sucked. But I don't know what to do about that, right? There's no like
No.
solution here.
Yeah, it's tough. Other than stop down here. I mean, that's why a lot of street photographers shoot at like f8 and a wide-ish lens. because I
I
like
want to
taking
shoot
it.
at f8.
Yeah, I like
What
your
am I
face.
going to do with f8 photos?
So one thing I found
look at things in focus? That's not for me.
when I was 2018, I went to Vietnam to photograph a wedding, and I got there way earlier than I normally do for destination weddings to just take a couple days and get oriented. And I never got used to the time change. I remember feeling just the weirdest mood the entire time. I felt like I was not in my own body, and I just chalked that up to the time change and culture shock. But anyway, what I found, I really, really wanted to take photos in the dense food markets that they have in Hanoi, and it was I had my regular camera equipment, so I big. It was the EOS R, so that was definitely shooting mirrorless at that time. And I found this little formula that I realized, like, oh yeah, this is amazing. It works so great to shoot with the EOS R screen at a like 90-degree angle, so that it's basically photographing sideways from waist level sideways. So the lens is not pointed out in front of me, but my head is oriented straight out and the camera's off to the side. And then shoot with my tilt shift and walk past all these street vendors and just slowly rip off photos, and because the way tilt shift works, it's literally cutting like a slice of focus. So something can be in focus that's really close to you and really far away at the exact same time. You can have something in the foreground and the background focus at the exact same time. So anything that exists within that slice will be sharp. Now, it does a weird effect with the blur that a lot of people don't like the look of. It can look a little weird and just doesn't make sense to your brain because not a lot of people shoot tilt shift or free lens. It's the same effect. But because of that, I could just walk along and then I wouldn't have to worry about refocusing. All I had to worry about was the slice, the line, overlapping with the person's face or whatever I wanted, which made it very, very fast and easy to get street photos candidly. And people half the time didn't even realize because my head wasn't pointed in their direction. So that's a strategy if you do a lot of street shooting. And also because of the way a tilt shift works, you can get a heck of a lot of depth without having to be that close to your subject. A lot of times if you want that nice bokeh pop, you got to be within 5 foot range or so with a 50 at least. You could shoot like a really long telephoto, which is another reason people love those. They don't have to be physically close to their subject because a lot of people are uncomfortable doing that. But with tilt shift, you can shoot with like a 24 and get an insane amount of bokeh. It was a surprisingly useful lens for me when I was also on safari. My 50 tilt shift, I used more than my 200 millimeter f4 or whatever.
Excuse me, sir. That's bananas.
Yeah, but it's crazy.
You've safaried bananally.
Yes. If you go on Safari, I'd actually recommend getting the 85 tilt shift. That's another popular one. I don't own it, but that is what I would choose.
Well, I'm not currently planning on going on Safari anytime soon. But,
sorry, I don't know how man, we are jumping all over the place today. But I don't know if that would have worked well for you in New York, given your specific circumstance. And if you haven't tried it, you should try a free. I hate this name, but you can Google it if you haven't. It's also popularly known as lens whacking, but I like to call it free lensing.
Free lensing.
You detach the lens from your camera body, keep it within sort of the mount a bit, but just hold it at a very slight angle, and you get the same tilt shift effect, just because it changes the plane of focus to be diagonal. And I bet that would work really well with the Medicon and the Fuji. Depends on how it sits in the mount. I'm not sure.
I'm a little worried about free lensing in general because it's just a worrisome thing, right?
A lot of opportunity for dust and crap to get on your sensor.
Yeah. I need to take a self-portrait with free lensing, so just like holding the thing right in front of me and just like wiggle it around and get a self-portrait that way. It's like one of my list of ideas that I have for the next. Oh God, I've only got like 10 left, 12 left.
Nice. Time's fine. Admittedly, I didn't think of this at the time of how great this worked out, but I modified a 50 millimeter f1.8 prime lens because it was super cheap, and I figured, I don't know, I had two maybe, or at least one as a backup I never used. So I took the actual metal mount off to solely use it for free lensing. And ended up being just kind of the best lens you could possibly do that with, because it's a 1.8. The rear element is very, very small and narrow. So you can get, especially once you take the metal mount off, a huge amount of angle. And you get natural light leaks because of that gap now. And so if you want to borrow mine, or you can find a cheap 50 1.8 for like $80, even if it's broken, like if it doesn't autofocus anymore, just rip off all the screws, expose just the rear element, and then it's a wonderful lens to free lens with. And you can use it on any camera because you're not attaching it to the mount on purpose. It's a lot of really cool artifacts that way. So.
This is a surprising amount of confusing information. I am both surprised and confused.
Well, let me explain.
So rip off. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm ripping off the back part, right? So like, let's say the lens here. I have a lens here. I don't care for it, right? So now like suddenly I've got this metal mount.
Yep.
So just unscrew this little screw, and that's it. That's all I unscrew.
I'm going to describe it in a little more detail for people that aren't watching, and also send you my modification over iMessage right now so you can see. It'll make sense as soon as you see it. And I again didn't realize just how perfect this lens would be. I only did it because it was cheap, but it is the perfect lens for super easy free lensing if you like to free lens a lot. And honestly, that's something I've been meaning to throw back in my bag. I haven't actually done it in a while. But you can also free lens with any lens that you can, as long as when it's detached from the mount, the aperture stays open. Older Canon, I think it's just their EF lenses. When it detaches from the camera mount, the aperture closes. Nikon always I had an edge with Nikon because when they detached, the aperture was open. And anyway, so yeah, did you get my iMessage?
I did.
Yeah, so you can see it's not, I didn't really emphasize the mount being gone. Maybe I did later in the article. Oh, I did. Here, I'll just send you the freaking article link. And anybody else curious? Yes, I really need to start writing published articles again. Anybody that's curious, just Google Sam Hurd freelancing, and you can find my article on my webpage. And yeah, I literally just took all the metal off just by unscrewing the mounts, and then you just have a huge amount of flexibility to freelance. It's cool. And if you look down at the photo examples, there's one that really illustrates the point of something being in focus in the foreground and background of a couple on a tennis court. And I was shooting through the net, and they were off on the other side of the court. And the net is in focus, and so are they at the same time. That's a little extreme. It does look like photoshopped, but that's how it looks in camera. There's another one, a bride standing in front of a painting that I love, actually, because she's in focus, just her face, and then it slices through to the painting that was on her wall in her family's home. A slice of that painting was also in focus. Pretty cool.
And a weird portrait of Ron Paul.
I got so much crap for that. Oh my God, his followers are intense. They were so mad that I didn't use the opportunity to take something that they could use to promote him, because they just hated the portrait. And I was like, I'm so sorry. God, I was just doing what I wanted to do. I didn't realize. Anyway.
Sorry, you should have been a better libertarian, Sam. You should have,
Yes. But again, one of the other cool things is, and this can get out of control in a way that is probably way past usable, but the light leaks that you can get are really cool, as long as you don't go too overboard. Because you literally have a crack or a gap between your sensor and the lens.
Yeah.
Sun leaks through there. You get awesome light leaks, which used to be really cool. I mean, that was one fun thing about old film cameras that were poorly constructed. You would get these weird cracks of light that would make an unanticipated, random, organic effect. You can do that with digital cameras too.
Get a little bit of joy.
And with mirrorless, seeing that in real time now, it's money. And with mirrorless actually highlighting, because focus peaking still works. All it's doing is an assessment of it doesn't need any lens data for focus peaking to work. So you can detach and free lens, and you'll get a red or white or whatever color you have highlight on exactly what's in focus. It's awesome. So much easier than it used to be. Cool. Yeah. So
3GS for free
I'm hoping if you're listening, if you haven't tried
fine. I will free lens my self-portrait.
You can make that your day. Just make your whole branding free lensing for free people, something like that. I don't know.
Free lensing for free.
And then charge more than anyone else. That's the key. It's like
Yeah, that's the
freelancing
dream.
for free people.
I'm gonna shoot a
$5,000
single
session.
wedding a year, and that's it. I'm just gonna pay for my life.
There was back before I ever shot my first wedding, there was a photographer that came to the press club. And because the press club is literally a membership of journalists, including photojournalists. And so they have like all these little member club within the press club things, including a photo group. And it's a lot of really, really older folks that I never connected with because they're retired. That's all they really have time to do anymore is hang out at the press club and talk about photography, but some legends there. So they have some sway to put, I haven't been in a while, but they would pull in some pretty legendary people that, and one, I can't remember his actual name, but he had his whole career shooting mostly luxury, super high-end weddings. And he came to demo, I think they were called spider lights. So it was continuous lights for portraits, which now seems really obvious, but back in 2009, that was pretty novel. And he also had a big promo for an album company he uses because he would do one or two like $100,000+ weddings a year. That was his business model. And one of his things that would impress his clients the most was making their wedding album on the wedding day. And I thought that was silly because it's like, and then you take pictures of them opening up their wedding album that you just photographed, and then what do? Make another album with their reactions to that?
Yeah, rinse, repeat. And then you put
I
it
always
on
think
your
that's
YouTube
so funny
channel.
about when videographers, I've worked with them several times, marketing gold, but they'll set up a projector later in the reception and show like a highlight reel of the day. And I always find that so funny because I photographed them reacting to that, and it just seems very like meta in a
We're
way.
already here.
Exactly. We're like doing the thing. This isn't what we're here to do right now. But people lose their minds about that because it's just, if it's a good videographer, that's a pretty impressive thing to do. But I think it really takes away from the focus of like, this is about their wedding, not about your video. Or, that's another reason I never got into slideshows as a photographer. It's marketing gold though. Like people will ask who did this. What is your Instagram? I'm going to follow up with you for my wedding.
When you had a studio space, a dedicated studio space, did you ever do the client slideshows? Because client slideshows for us was a big like sales thing, right? So like we would charge $250 or whatever for the session fee, and then you would for like senior portraits, right? Like senior portrait would be like, okay, you've got your session fee, $250. That is a credit applied to whichever package that you're purchasing, and then you purchase X amount of photos. So like the lower package was like 3 or 5 photos, I don't remember, that you got. I want to say it was 3, and that was like $900.
I'm really surprised that business model continues to work really well for a lot of people. It's not in my nature to sell something like that, and
so it keeps going, right?
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know what it is, it's like the next package is like 10 photos, the next one is like 20 or 30, and then you get X amount of prints with it, or X amount of like little cutouts to give to your family, whatever it may be, and then you can also you also get like the digital files to share on social. But it was like, We're talking like a production, right? Like, oh, come on downstairs. Here's your champagne for the parents if you drink. If not, here's your sparkling water. Here's your, like rinse, repeat. Here's your very emotional music. Like it was, in hindsight, a little emotionally manipulative. To like put like Howard Shore's like.
That's all selling stuff is. You're just emotionally manipulating people. I never did that. No, I would meet clients in person so they could like physically look through some albums, but it was not even about
physically know you exist.
That
right.
But it wasn't even about selling the album. It was about just having something to do while we were talking through things. And but I left a lot of money on the table, I'm sure, by not leveraging the studio space to do that. But it's, again, not in my nature. And I just don't want people to feel like they have to, they're going to react a certain way, even if they hate the photos, no matter what. It's actually really interesting psychology to think about. Like if you were there and you make this, whole you craft this atmosphere, and especially music just totally manipulates how people interpret a photo. It's fascinating to me, and actually something I really struggle with. I guess morally, I don't know the right word, but when photographers will take an artist's song and put it in their slideshow, I'm like, God, 50% of what you're feeling watching the slideshow is from the music that this photographer has nothing to do with. It's not like they wrote the song. They didn't write and record it. This is not part of their craft. Not, you know, I'm not saying they didn't cite and make it very clear what's happening, but it's just such an uncomfortable thing to me. But they're going to react a certain way when you set all this up in your favor. And I don't want people to have to feel like that. I want them to have a genuine, like, oh my God, I love these photos. Or probably happens sometimes, oh my God, I hate these photos, and like never talk to me again.
How often do people hate your photos and never talk to you again?
Oh, I'm sure all the time. No, I take that back. I'm sure it has happened before, but I'm sure it happens. I'm sure, what I mean by all the time is I'm sure there's many photos in every gallery that I deliver that clients don't like. Now, thankfully, they're, I think, outweighed by the photos they do like. But, you know, I think everything skews in your favor when you're sitting with them and you have this very controlled environment. They're always going to come away with a positive reaction. One of the things I've also found really fascinating, sorry, popcorn is crying, is how, and this is actually an issue with iPhones and, you know, being so pervasive now, a client will get and see like wide angle ceremony shot of their wedding ceremony, and the sky is really blue or cloudy or whatever. Looks the way it does.
Yeah.
I might have to let him out in a second. And then I will edit it so that it's like really high key. Maybe I couldn't get enough dynamic range. Maybe the light just, you know, the sky is just basically white because I'm overexposing because they were in shadows or something like that. And I've had clients say like, ooh, but my friend's iPhone picture, like there was a really crazy cool cloud in the sky. And I was like, okay, well, if you notice, everybody in the environment is super dark and blue because they're in shade, and the phone doesn't have, you know, unlimited depth of field or dynamic range. The phone is capturing and exposing for the sky. So I can edit your photos to have the sky be blue, but you're not going to look the way that you look right now. It's a trade-off, right? I'm having to make. And some clients don't understand that, and iPhone perspectives and the way things look can shape how they expect it to look in your photos, and that can be somewhat of any disconnect like that is setting yourself up for a problem. So tying that back to in-person sales, I do think there's a genuine, though it is emotionally manipulative in a lot of ways, genuinely it's a positive way to present your work because people will interpret it, hopefully, much more positively. Did you ever have an experience where somebody was like, we're not ordering any of these, we're really upset, I look awful, or something like that?
Oh, no. I'm an exceptional and even better salesman, you know? The biggest complaint that we had was people coming in expecting to buy the $600 package and leaving having ordered the $1,300 one. Like every other time, probably, that is what happened. They would complain roll in.
They spent too much?
Well, just like they would think and like come in with the idea of, okay, I'm buying 3. You know, like it's one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, we can afford this, but it hurts, or yeah, it's like on the edge, or oh, it's a little more than we budgeted, that sort of thing. But then once you're in the room, seeing the images and like winnowing down to 3, you know, and like it's your kid, and you're like immortalizing them in like this very last time they're at home, and this is how you're gonna remember this section of their lives, and suddenly you have to pick 3. And then I did have one mom who complained that I made her son too hot.
Okay.
He was a football player and like ripped. And so he and I were like doing a regular normal session. And then one of the locations that we shot at had a pool. And I was like, you want to hop in the pool, man? Like, I'll get in the pool if you want to get in the pool. He's like, yeah, let's get in the pool. So we like hopped in the pool and did like a whole extra like half hour shooting in the pool. And I did like a hilarious Baywatch jump out of a, you know, like Little Mermaid push out of the water, shaking his hair. And, you know, like his name was Jason. And like Jason killed it. And his mom was like, I was not prepared to see my son looking like a man today, and that's on me. That's not on you. I will not be purchasing the ones where he looks like a man. And I was like, it's fine, Jason. I'll send it to you. You're good, buddy.
Amazing. See, I couldn't deal with that.
Weird.
Yeah, I couldn't deal with it. I was watching the movie Once the other day. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah, of course. I love to cry.
It's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good, man. Such an underrated. And you know what's crazy about that film in
It's
particular?
not underrated. It won an Oscar.
No, I know. But
It became
it was
like one
underrated
of the
in my head.
largest.
Sorry, it was for me. I know. But sorry.
You
But
control that rating, Sam.
What is mind blowing though is it is way better than like I'd forgotten just how technically budget the whole thing was. It was filmed kind of documentary type style with real crappy cameras, clearly digital.
Oh yeah, they had like $20.
Yeah, and it's kind of, maybe they exist and they just don't break through the noise in a way that I ever see. Plus, I don't really watch YouTube, but I'm kind of shocked that there haven't been some really groundbreaking, big, mainstream, successful like YouTube films that have come out, because you really could have filmed the entirety of Once on an iPhone, no doubt in my mind, and it would have looked better in every way. They had nothing that an iPhone wouldn't do, like way better now. And obviously, you still need the excellent musicianship and actors and lighting, but you can do that for a lot less than you used to be able to. So anyway,
I mean,
back
like
to the
there
point.
are a lot of like things that are happening here, right? You know, because like Once is also, they literally fell in love in real life while making. Oh yeah, they dated for like 4 years. It's like their second album. Because it was Once, which is Glenn Hansard and what is her name? Marketa Golva. There we go, Marketa. They like filmed the thing. He was part of the Irish band The Frames,
Right.
and then they met while putting this together, working on it. And they recorded it as their own thing, and then they made the film. And during filming, they fell in love. They started a band together, re-released the album under that band's name, which is called The Sewing Season. And then they went on a 2-year world tour, and it was amazing and wonderful and terrible. And then they realized that they shouldn't, actually be together, and that their love, while wonderful and beautiful, was a temporary thing, a long-term thing. Well, it was real life. It's just not like the long-term thing that they were looking for.
Right.
So then
when you meet somebody
up.
outside of like your actual life context, it's like a camp girlfriend. Like in summer camp, people fall in love and date, and then they go home and they're like, "Oh crap, this doesn't work."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Story of my life, man. Summer camp romance. And so then they recorded an album during their breakup. Wow. So their second album is like them processing their breakup, and it's like soul crushing. And then they went on tour one last time, and they haven't recorded anything ever since. I love them.
So 3 things. This first thing you're gonna, I think, love, or you might hate. But I specifically asked GBT about the story of Once, and if it could tell me any interesting facts about it. And it left all of that out. Didn't mention anything about any of that. It said other things, mostly about the director that wrote and directed it. So that's annoying.
Yeah, you missed out on
GPT
the real
really missed out
drama.
A lot of the drama. Yeah. 2, what made me think of that movie was her ability to negotiate from $3,000 down to $2,000. He said nothing. It was just in her nature to be very much like, we're going to pay you $1,000 and then meet in the middle at $2,000. It's amazing to me, people that have that ability to be so. It's partially maybe a confidence thing, but it's weird because you're not. It's the studio owner or any situation in life where this has happened to me. It's not like I really dislike the person for talking me down, but when I do that to somebody else, I feel like I'm going to insult them or make them feel disliked or that I don't value them. But yeah, it's weird. Negotiating, especially when it comes to money and selling, is just such a a weird kind of art form that some people either have it or you don't. I definitely do not. I can sell things that I believe in because I just talk about them and hopefully highlight the strengths and positive aspects, and people buy it or they don't, and that's where it kind of ends for me. And then there's a third thing about wants. Now I can't remember because my dog is really stressing me out. He's mad that I'm eating my chicken sandwich up here without him.
I mean, I'm mad that you're eating a chicken sandwich during recording. So hey, Popcorn and I have something in common. I can let you just hang out with your dog and eat your food. We can just, but before you go, look up the Swell season because they made a documentary about the following tour and or breakup.
Swell season. Okay.
Yeah. So that's the documentary about the success of their documentary style film.
Oh, it is up to. Cool.
What a joy. And then there's, some heartbreaking songs that you can listen to.
Oh, they're still touring.
Yeah, one of the best concerts I ever...
Look how old they are now.
Well, yeah. Time happens, man.
Look at that.
She got married.
She's old.
They're like 10 years, 15 years apart, something like that, which is another reason why, their relationship didn't work out. But they are great. It's a great concert in person.
Wonderful.
I've been like 4 times. You're going to love it.
Cool. All right. Well, this has been an episode of everything, so we'll just end it there.
Yeah. It's sorry, everyone. This was a everything appreciation instead of endless. Subscribe to Glass.